very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Welcome back from the Easter holidays. And my guest this morning, Mr. Yemi Makpadirun, governance and strategy expert. And, along with Mr. Ademola Oshodi. Ademola Oshodi is a governance and policy analyst. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Indeed. What else can we talk about nowadays? Because, I think between politics and is it not football in Nigeria, and then add religion. I think those three will keep us well occupied. Now we're all thinking about the new phase of government, what it will be like, post 29th of May, I believe. Now, this whole matter of ministers, as we have 37 ministers. One paper is carrying that the president is under pressure to see what he can do about enlarging that pool. 37 ministers, one state each, plus the federal capital territory. First of all, maybe let me get your opinions on that. Is this, because people are saying, can you go back to the 42-man? I didn't even know that that is the way it was, that there was a 42-man kind of a team arrangement. But what do you think between the 37 man team and the 42-man team that people are advocating that we should go back to? Maybe I can start with you, Yemi.
Well, let me just start by saying that as a sort of laying a foundation for this discussion, that structure actually follows strategy. Whatever structure you want to run with as a leader must flow from the strategy that you have. In other words, what is your vision? What are your missions? What are the programs, your projects, your policies that you want to focus on? All of that.
What objective do you have in view?
What are the broad objectives that you have in view? What are the milestones that you want to see to let you know that you're actually approaching your vision? So that should play a very significant role normally in determining what kind of structure you want to have to propel your organization. Secondly, whether it's a 37-man or 37-member,
ministerial
team,
shall we call it that?
Or 42, what the Constitution basically says about the size is that there must be at least one minister from every state of the federation. So there is a lower limit, in which case you can plus the federal capital territory. You can't have less than 37, because the federal capital territory also enjoys the status of a state. So 36 states plus the federal capital territory. However, you can have a much larger federal executive council. Ministerial list. Like I said,
but
depending on certain
and
other
all that
factors.
kind of thing. Remember?
Yes, we need to also remind ourselves that this president, who has been re-elected for a second term, stated very clearly before he came out with his list of ministers that he was going to stick to, a slim, cabinet. In other words, one minister per state. That, in a sense, was to practicalize, or show, the mindset of the president in terms of cost of running government. So you may concede that to him, but in reality, smaller really doesn't mean cheaper. And maybe as we go on, in this discussion,
Ademola, your thoughts on this very, topic, this very question.
Well, thank you. You raised a great point, which is basically, does it conform with his vision and his mindset of where he wants to take the country to? Having a 37 or 42 member cabinet, would that help him achieve what his aims are? Would it have cohesion? Would it have purpose? Of course, the Constitution, as I said, has to have, we need to have one person from each state and the capital. But the point I want to raise here is the fact that, Buhari, as in many cases, provided this platform and this vision for these ministers to follow. And it's not really the size. It's, I would say even possible, we have people that have multiple portfolios, like Babatunde Raji Fashola has 3 cabinet positions in one. You've got people with multiple positions in one, and it basically gets the job done. Then fine, and we can have other people in less minor roles.
Is it
But
three
the key is to
cabinet
ensure.
positions?
Well, three
Oh,
portfolios.
three
Yeah,
portfolios.
I should say,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I don't know how you
Yeah.
look at it.
Well, even the layman will probably say cabinet positions because
Okay.
it's easier to. But yeah, three portfolios.
Okay.
But the key is to ensure that the constitution requirements are met, and also the vision, and important to have the competent people involved. That's key. I would wish for a cabinet with more technocrats than anything else. I think political people of the past or people that have ambition, may be rather distracting. So I hope the president is more concerned about the content of their character and their ability than the political ramifications.
And that's a deep one, because as you just said the words content of the character,
Yes.
of course you know who I remembered. Martin Luther King, you remember? He
right,
said that is what he wants, his children to be remembered for, not for the color of the skin, but for the content. Just as you said those few words, I just said, but I'm sure you didn't want to take it that deep.
No,
that's not what you
No, no, definitely.
But still, this whole business of maybe would you also like to comment on? Is it because the president wanted to keep, for example, only the president himself knows his mind, and maybe a few close people, but between the president and God, they know what their mind is. This whole matter about having 37 ministers, and one of them has the portfolios of works, housing, and power. Was that all? I don't think it's the only one. I think there are other.
Well, yeah, I think we have Richmond Mechi,
Yes,
transportation and aviation.
Yeah. So
things
these
like
are
that.
things that used to be individual ministries. Do you think it was essentially to cut costs, or is that it, and it was just a matter of, look, I know you can handle two, so I'm going to give you two. I know you can handle three, so I'm going to give you three. Or was there kind of a synergy that these people can sort of play on within their own skill sets? Fashola, for instance, there must be some skill set between works, power, and what's the other one, housing. If there's some synergy that the president knew that Fashola could bring to bear, maybe, I don't know, is it that, or is it not? Don't overthink it. Is that the president wanted to just keep to the number 37, and so any extra ministries he would just pile on to someone else?
No, I think there are two basic things here. The first one is that the president wanted a slim ministry.
That's the first thing.
So that's the first thing. Now, there is this other more technical responsibility of knowing who should do what. When the list of ministers are submitted, usually, traditionally, there are no portfolios attached there. And so a lot of people, go to town speculating who should be where. And I must confess, nobody, absolutely nobody, ever imagined that, one ministerial nominee, was going to have those three key ministries: power, works, and housing. However, I think a lot of thinking went into it. When you look at the profile of the incumbent, occupying those three, running those three portfolios, Babatunde Raji Fashola, as a former governor of Lagos State, where he was operating a budget that was possibly, 1.5 times the size of the budget of works, housing and power as governor of Lagos State. To him, it's not really going to be overwhelming. It's administered, a bigger resource base, than those three ministries, except for the fact that at this point, we will be looking at the entire federation as his constituency. And the relationship between those three ministries, I said something about structure following strategy. I guess it's an integrative approach of having somebody coordinating those three core ministries that appears to have some interdependence. When you talk about housing, it is basically infrastructure. When you talk about works, it is basically infrastructure. When you talk about power, it is basically infrastructure. And when you look at the part of the sub-vision or the mission of this president is to embark on massive infrastructural renewal. He needed an arrowhead, somebody with the intellectual capacity and the leadership competence that can coordinate all of this. And I think to a great extent, I mean, the incumbent has succeeded. Now, that is not to say that we must continue in this trajectory. If the president believes that at this point there is a need to move either the minister to some other areas of need, or to unbundle, how do you call it now? Unbundle,
Yes.
those three ministries.
Portfolios.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it's a function of some other considerations. But like Mr. Oshodi said, I think that the political consideration should be the last, the minimal, or the least consideration in determining who becomes minister. A cabinet
Yes.
of technocrats who necessarily may not be politicians is more desirable at this point in time.
I agree.
Well, if the president is going to keep to the game plan of, keeping the numbers slim, I mean, when you look at all the other ministers, we're talking about Tunde Fashola right now, because nobody knew. Well, most people were surprised when the man had a triple barrel, never mind double barrel, we've been used to, But virtually all of them. There's also the Minister of Budget and National Planning. Take those two. And if you look you look at there's Amechi.
Transport and aviation.
Transport and aviation. In fact, when you look at, there's someone else who is a Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Yeah. So in fact, I'm looking.
Sports and youth development.
And youth development. So I'm looking to see, nobody's allowed to just do one job. Almost. Lai Mohammed is the Minister of Information and Culture.
Yes.
In other areas, they will even add women, children, culture, and then find a way to. I missed what you said.
I mean, we've had ministers of culture in the past, just culture.
Exactly.
In the past.
So exactly. Well, I think there's is there someone Minister of Environment? But yes, that one. Yeah. Go and face that one alone. I can't remember anything being attached to environment. So this, well, I suppose there's a way. It's a way of the state we're at. Can we really afford a cabinet that is 47 or more? Because as we are speaking, we understand that the president must be, just, going by my speculation, my individual speculation, going by the headline this morning in The Nation, there are 3 governors, ministers in the race for Buhari's cabinet. And I don't know whether or not he's going to pay any attention, any mind to them, whether he already has his own mind. But if you are limited to 36, 37,
I think they should not be automatically disqualified.
The governors and the ministers.
Yes, they should not be. But the key here, as I said, is showing they have the competence and the vision and the character to carry out Buhari's mission. That's the key. I mean, obviously they have the political baggage and they're very loyal to the party and to the, to Buhari's cause. But some people may look at them and say, oh, they're going to be compensated for whatever reason. But the key here is, and many of them are very competent people, technically.
Because that's where I was going to come
private sector
at
background.
the end of the day, how competent?
Yeah, they have a private sector background that was been overshadowed because of their political ambitions. So that should not be overlooked, So that itself is one of the most sort of big criteria, I think, that His Excellency, the President, should consider.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think in agreeing with Mr. Oshodi, I must also add that perhaps the reason why some people think, governors should be excluded is the fact that they will still want to play politics, in their home state, even as ministers. And that has the potential of distracting them. And when you look back at history, really, some of the best performing ministers that we have had were always the not so partisan members of the cabinet. Let's look at the immediate past president, Goodluck Jonathan. He had an outstanding minister in the current president of the African Development Bank. I mean, he had no attachment to politics in his home state. I wouldn't say he didn't have additional.
Yeah.
So when you look at someone like, I don't know, there are different divergent views about the real performance, but Okonjo-Iweala also stands out. She wasn't, linked to wanting to become a governor or whatever in Delta State. And so it was assumed that she was able to focus, on her calling. And I think we can replicate that and even go beyond that by having more and more people who will not be distracted by the politics of their home state or political ambition, either of themselves or their acolytes, so that they can focus for 4 years or 3 years, 8 months, on governance and beyond the ministers. I think we must also know that there are some very important vacancies that will also, occur in the course of the year. For instance, the governor of the central bank is key to government, monetary, objectives. And so, what kind of person?
Governor of the central bank will be working, with the Minister of Finance.
The governor of the central bank, you see, it's like a sui generis position.
Yeah,
as the governor of the central bank, you have direct access. You report to the president, really, not the Minister of Finance, but they work together. So he is the central bank of the country is in charge of the monetary policy of that country. So we must also look beyond the cabinet positions, because it's not only the ministers that have the capacity to either drive the economy to the right trajectory,
other key appointments.
or distract us from
and remember, with the one time, maybe more than one time, assembly people have said that, look, how they wish Mr. President would attach offices that he thinks to people so that we could know how to engage with them better to determine suitability or otherwise before we go and give our own approval. But that's a totally different
That's
We're getting vetted by people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. George has been waiting for a while. I'm coming back to you so that you can comment on that particular idea. Good morning, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to your guests.
Thank you for calling in. Good morning.
Uncle Yori, I am not worried about the number of ministers, but the performance of the ministers. Because even if they are 50 and they perform, it is the economy that will benefit more. If they are 20 and they do not perform, we are the losers. Yesterday, I tried to get you when the Minister of Information was with you. I couldn't reach you.
Oh, okay.
If you look at the situation on ground, Uncle Yori, the ministers who are working with the president, they have hardly keyed into his vision, the vision of eradicating or minimizing corruption in Nigeria. I didn't see one minister that championed anti-corruption fight. I said it before. There is still corruption in MDA. So if the president is to pick his men, he must key into his vision. Apart from Minister of Works, that we are seeing the roads is constructing and the effort is making in power, and then the one constructing the rail. Show me any other one that you can say this is what the minister has done. The Minister of Education, the Minister of Health, that are very key. I'm personally not seeing what they are doing. Even the Minister of Education himself, the Minister of Information himself, has not impressed me. Yesterday, you heard how many people were complaining about the people not knowing what the government is doing. He had been there before. I confronted him that the press in Nigeria is totally against the government of this country, and he is not able to provide a link. For me, he should not return to the cabinet. Maybe he should go to another ministry where his abilities are more useful.
Now, which one is that? That is
the Minister of Information himself.
Okay, Lai Mohammed. Okay,
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
He should go to. He has abilities, but they are probably not for managing the media or the press.
Okay.
Apart from your station, for example, there is no other station in this country that you can call and make, as a common man in the society, and make your views known about what people are discussing there. They just bring people the light that can criticize the government. All the media, none of them is highlighting what the government is doing. Then where is the Minister of Information?
All right then. Well, thank you, Mr. George. Thank you for your contribution. That's another thing. People have their own idea. I'm looking at the list here, and the list of ministers, quite a number of them. Okay, there's the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mohammed Bello. But interestingly, I'm seeing Kehinde Adeosun. Okay, that's a different story. Sorry, Kemi. Of course, there's a one big Oga,
Yeah.
Mr. Kehinde Adeosun of advertising fame back in the day. No, we're talking about Kemi Adeosun, the Minister of Finance,
Yes.
who had to leave in unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But she had to let go, resign. Actually, that's a story, if anybody was interested in it, but I don't think we have the time this morning. That's a different story altogether. But you look at, somebody talked about the education, it was Mr. Josh talked about education, and he says he doesn't see, what people have done. I don't want to go through names, but, there's, how about agriculture? These are things that are very, very important. He said he didn't see anything in health, agriculture.
It's rather, I think is not accurate. Especially
in his assessment.
It's
okay,
not, it's
you
not.
don't agree
No,
entirely.
No.
Okay,
I mean, for instance, agriculture. I mean, you have to be a northern farmer or a farmer in the middle belt, to be able to fully understand what this government has done for farmers.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely more. There's more capital for them. There's more loans. There's more fertilizers. There's more people speaking to them, meeting their needs. And apart from those, the farmers, there's also the the people that do the processing of the the farming products, and how much their industry has grown.
Okay.
So Nigeria's importation of rice has greatly reduced, even vanished. So I think it's quite misled in his judgment of agriculture. And in education, in many cases, if you put in the food for the children that encourages them to go to school, in the poor areas of Nigeria, that itself, even if they're learning in difficult circumstances, they can actually be encouraged to know that at least
it's part of it. It's part of the whole education
exactly,
thing.
and the mindset.
The mindset. Okay. Cyprian, in Alimosho, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Very good morning, Mr. Yori.
Thank you for calling in again.
I want to bring in one or two this topic and then welcome your guests. I greet them this morning.
Okay, then again, like I said yesterday, one. Maybe go, since you said one or two, choose one.
Yes, one. I think the president should choose technocrats this time around. He should do away with politicians. You can see one. The government, President Buhari should do away with politicians as ministers in this case now, because technocrats will go there for the kill. We don't want those who will be aspiring to be governor of their state while they were ministers. Like you can see ministers like Amechi and the rest of them, they are ministers here and their portfolios will still have one or two things to do in their state. Let us have technocrats, total technocrats, so that the job will be done, so that the common man will feel the impact of government. That is my contribution this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cyprian. I appreciate it. Maybe again, my guest here, one is a governance and policy analyst, the other is a governance and strategy expert. What are the things that maybe people should take into consideration? Of course, it's only the president at the end of the day who has that ultimate privilege. But what should he be taken into consideration in determining the names he's going to send to the National Assembly? Cyprian has just said that, and I think it was said earlier, that if it were up to me, I think technocrats alone,
well, I don't think.
But it doesn't work like that, does it?
I don't think sorry to interrupt you. I don't think the governors should be disqualified, because many of them have had successful private sector experience.
But the governor might be a technocrat.
Yes, well, once he stops being a technocrat, when he becomes a public figure, but they can still revert, I guess, to be a technocrat if you consider.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Well, since we're talking all this big grammar, please, you guys are going to define a technocrat to me, just so that we can bring this thing down to the level of an SS3 kid. What, for the understanding of an SS3 kid, is a technocrat?
Well, I'm a technocrat.
Okay.
Now, a technocrat really is someone who is a specialist, in a particular field, and who has been known, who has built, a name in that area. It could be in finance, it could be in investment, it could be in project management, it could even be in public administration.
Okay.
But who are not partisan, in nature, who are not members, of political parties. They may be politically vibrant and aware. In fact, they should be, but they are not. So they have the ability.
So you don't normally identify them with one party or the other. Is that what you're saying?
No,
you don't usually.
Usually, yes. Usually,
you don't usually.
Exactly. For instance, it's
At least publicly.
At least publicly. That's why I said. Oh yes.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
You don't. So
I'm going to come back to continue, and because I have to take Demola's input on that particular issue, in addition to your completing yours. But Umar, good morning, sir. Omar Makodi.
Good morning, Mr. Henry.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Omar.
Yeah, it's Omar. Please, I want to contribute to your program.
Please go ahead.
I will agree with April, as he said, Mr. President should try and get technocrats and...
we are still trying to find out who exactly is a technocrat. But
yes, but he said he should do away with the politicians.
Omar, maybe you can join in on the question. What do you understand by a technocrat?
You know what I would suggest to Mr. President is he should look for the vibrant youth. You know, technocrat, the youth. Let the youth be among his cabinet now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And also, I would agree with the people when he said he should do away with politicians. Politicians are the ones who brought Mr. President there. So he has to find out the trustworthy ones that will assist this country.
Okay, he has to
do away with those ones that, as far as I'm concerned, you know, they contributed nothing to his cabinet. But he should find out youth. Let youth be in his cabinet so that we will start thinking of who will become the next president among youth also. Let the youth come and try their best also so that everybody will see.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. Omar. Now, I'm going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to have to address, before I forget all of them. Number one, I think I still need to get comment from in-studio here as to technocrat. Who exactly, who is a technocrat? And Mr. Omar has just joined in with, and can he put some young guys in there? I mean, Fashola is in there already, and maybe there, but maybe that's the kind of thing he wants. But then maybe he means young, as in younger than even Fashola himself. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. We still got Mr. Yemi Makpadirno, who's a governance and strategy expert, and Mr. Demola Oshodi, who is a governance and policy analyst in the studio. And we're looking at the whole question of the cabinet, Mr. President's cabinet. You know, it's a bit like, if you want, people, the rest of us counting somebody's money. When we hear, we know how much money you have, so we can help you count it. Sometimes it feels a bit like that. But there's a sense in which Mr. President doesn't need to be envied at all. Here we are, we're talking about, you know, this whole cabinet thing. Maybe you want to weigh in very, very briefly on who exactly is a technocrat, because you hear these things and you want to keep it simple so that we know, so that an SS2 or 3 kid will understand, oh, is that what you're talking about? Anyhow, when I say Mr. President is not to be envied, you know, somebody just said I want more youth in there. It's just that if we have time, it's going to come. Somebody is going to say there should be more women in there than there are. And of course, somebody is going to say that, look, people with special needs, AKA disabled people, but they're not disabled in any way, their minds, somebody's going to throw those in. It was even suggested while we were off air that, wait now, how about diaspora people? They are Nigerians too. Somebody might say, so there's so many content. Then there's a big one. The state is helping us with 37 states, that is including the Federal Capital Territory. But then there's going to be religious balancing as well. People are going to be counting how many Christians are in there, how many Muslims are in there. I don't know if they count how many of Ibile, Asha Ibile, the traditionalists are in there. I don't know.
Not yet.
Not yet. You see now. I don't know if somebody should be adding for the Ifa people too. It's a whole cosmology, anyhow.
But I have this feeling that some of them are actually in the closet, but we won't
exactly.
Go there.
So these are all the things that are going to need to be balanced, and as I'm sure people have their checklists that are worrying about. First of all, I'm watching how well did the president do. Are there equal number of Muslims and Christians? And if not, is there a very, very genuine explanation so that I can see, or, women, there are people who would say, look, let's just go for 50-50. We'll stop. So I don't know.
Yes, because I mean, we look at Rwanda. Half their cabinet is women.
That Rwanda, and it is working. It's working. I mean, well, yeah.
Yes.
But then somebody will quickly remind you, if you needed reminding, that, hey, but Rwanda near now. This is Nigeria.
Yes,
we see things differently, or do we?
It's more complicated here.
It's very easy for us as Nigerians, and I have taken it upon myself, to evangelize that with everybody I meet. I place less expectation on leaders now. I want to know, what you are doing in your own little corner. When we see the results from other, places, we are quick to want to see the same kind of thing happen in our country. But we are not willing to pay the price that has been paid in those jurisdictions. For instance, it's easy for a Nigerian to just say, just like we were saying this morning, let's have technocrats, let's have the best people in there. When you now, line up the best people that can do the job, and they happen to come from maybe one religious persuasion or one part of the country, then the same people will begin to say, oh, there should be balance. So leadership is especially Nigerian leadership, is a very serious thing. In Rwanda, for instance.
Okay, sorry, sir. In fact, I started out, my producer is just saying into my ear that what you said will come back and get Demola's perspective on technocrat. I didn't remember that, so I didn't go there. But we're going to take it. But in the meanwhile, Mohammed in Abuja, he's been holding on for a while. Good morning, Mr. Mohammed.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you very much for calling in.
And good morning to your guest.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Uncle Yori, in this country, seriously, we have a long way to go in this country. Seriously, because we are talking about maybe the minister that is going to work with the second tenure for the Mr. President.
Yeah.
Seriously, like my brother in Lagos said, even if it is 20 and they did not perform well, it's the country that are going to pay the price again.
That was Mr. George.
Do you understand? So we have some ministers like Minister of Abuja, Minister of Defense, Minister of Education, so many of them. Like Minister of Abuja, seriously, we have a road from Area 1 and to Kuchigoro. That road in the night from 7 to 10 o'clock, if your car has a problem, you run and leave this car. No street light, just common street light, nothing. We have a lot of things. They did not fix it. And if this is the slogan of Mr. President, even the second tenor, I'm very sorry. I don't know tomorrow how it's going to be, but I'm very sorry for Nigeria. Thank you, Uncle Yori. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for calling. I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry, please. Yes, could you pick it up on this whole technocrat of an issue? Yeah. He defined it as somebody who has just specialized and is not usually partisan.
I totally agree with him and took the words out of my mouth. A specialist, professional, apolitical.
Specialist meaning that he has developed his knowledge, his body of knowledge in a particular aspect.
Exactly.
It might be finance, it might be whatever it is.
It might be sports.
It might be sports.
It might be even, whatever, even environmental activists becoming
I suppose.
I suppose even I was going to talk about the Ukraine, where we have a comedian as a president, but I don't know how that enters politics, a comedian becoming a president of a country. But I get it's part of that. I think a technocrat is somebody who's apolitical, a professional, and is is very much away from the public. His political views are not publicly known.
So you therefore also will be voting for the idea of a technocrat, please?
No, I'll be voting. Well, I'll be supporting again the president pushing somebody that has great character, believes in his vision, is hardworking, and ready to do his job.
Okay.
I want to believe the technocrats are the most, by default, more like that. They don't have this political baggage around them. They're not former this, former that. But again, there have been successful governors or successful politicians. I think also we should not leave them out. There also be some governors that were very successful in their private life, that catapulted them into public glare, into office. They should also not be looked at. But ultimately, it's what is best for the country and for the president.
Okay.
We need strong institutions to be able to hold people accountable. You understand? If you fail, whether you're Chief Justice of the Federation, you should be held accountable to it. And so will the ministers, so will be any appointees. So that should be their check against people that are not efficient or corrupt.
Okay. Yakub, are you still there? Yakub, good morning, Yakub. I guess apologies for keeping you waiting. I was looking for a convenient a full stop, and as soon as I got it, I came right over to you.
Sir.
Thank you, sir. Please go ahead now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then good morning to your guest. Shibjori, whether it's a technocrat or politician, what Nigerian masses is looking for is good governance. Having said that, Shibjori, if you look at what Mr. George said earlier, out of all these ministers that is currently serving now, if you just pick 1, 2, 3 of them out, the rest of them, you may not likely point out what they did in this government. For example, look at the head. Are you telling me, Mr. Yori, in your area, go to health center in various areas, you will find out that there is nothing going on there. So what are the ministers doing? But if Yori, let me just say this quickly. You see, the problem is this. When Mr. President sent their name to National Assembly, I would like a station whereby, I've been saying this time without number, I would like to see a station whereby they will attach to portfolio so that when they are answering questions in that National Assembly, Nigerian citizens will know what to do at the National Assembly before you become a minister. And then there will be a parameter for you. If you don't deliver this so time, you out of the governance. Because failure to do so, it is when we are complaining. Especially whereby they will go to National Assembly, and then the National Assembly will say he's a former Senate president, he's a former national, take a bow and go. Take a bow and go. For what? You need to tell Nigerian citizens where are you heading to. For example, they give you Minister of Work. How do you go to resolve all those dilapidated roads? How do you go to fix the rain? How do you go to fix the health sector? The agriculture that we are telling the Nigerian citizens that we are producing rice every day. Still yet, the smuggling rice still coming to this country. How do you go to stop it? So that they will need to attach portfolio to them. So that we'll be able to ask the right questions. Thank you and God bless you.
Indeed, thank you very much. It's a point that seems so very logical. If I know that, Yemi Makwadero, that is before us now, because we are in the National Assembly and the man has come before us, and they're thinking of him as the Minister of Industries, then I would have known what questions and he would have known what kind of plan. But it's like, the way it works now, is there any problem with it? Where they go, just confirm him as a minister for me, please, him or her as a minister for me. I will decide later on what section I want to send him to. What is that? Is that satisfactory?
When presidential nominees, whether in Nigeria, United States, appear before the Senate to be cleared to occupy particular office, they are not being screened to ascertain their level of competence or expertise. They are being screened to establish their suitability to be in that high office, public office. Suitability in the sense of character. You see, because a leadership expert, I can't remember now whether it's Maxwell, said that 2 things are needed by a leader: strategy and character. But if you want to leave anyone out, you can leave out strategy.
But character.
But character. So it's not at the National Assembly that I want to test whether somebody can read, can write, because those ones are already assumed. The process of selection already took care of that. What we are looking at for now is their suitability. And with respect to attaching portfolio to them, it is only in recent times that we have had one individual occupying a particular ministry for the entire lifetime of a government. Many times there are, cabinet reshuffles, where people are moved from one ministry to the other. So if you submit my name as Minister of Education, and 1 year down the line, the president thinks I should move to become the Attorney General of the Federation, do I have to go back to the Senate to get clearance for that? So that is really not necessary. But I understand why Nigerians are saying so. Ministers are leaders, That is why when Fashola was made power minister, somebody thought, it should be an engineer that should occupy. I said, no. the position of a minister is to take decisions. You know, when a medical doctor, for instance, becomes the chief medical director of a teaching hospital, he no longer attends to patients unless he chooses to. The decisions he takes are decisions based on information he gets from engineers, from accountants, from nurses, and he takes responsibility for those decisions. So will he have to go back to engineering school to study engineering before knowing how to take a decision on works-related, issues in the teaching hospital? So people should understand that there is a difference. At that level you are talking is strategic. That level is strategic. So you are not really looking at, the technical competence.
And I wonder if Comrade Ayo in Oshogbo is still holding on. Comrade Ayo.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Oh, wonderful. So very thankful. Thank you very much for holding on. Apologies, but continue, please.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, once again, and good morning to our guests in the studio. Uncle Yori, if we like, let us put technocrats as ministers, as members of board, as chairman of board. We will continue to experience this problem if we don't solve our institutional problem. We have structural and institutional problems, period. Unless we solve that, we have so high level of corruption. Corruption has become an organized crime in Nigeria. So if we don't solve all these problems, we will continue to rove in one direction. See, a technocrat is somebody who is an expert in a particular field, who is brought in to solve a particular problem. See, if we don't have if we don't strengthen our institution, you bring in a technocrat, he will fail, honestly speaking. So the best thing for us is to sit down.
In spite of his knowledge.
Where the problem is. Let us strengthen our institution, restructure the whole thing. See, until we do that, we will continue to move in one direction. And we will continue to complain and complain. See, Mr. President he sent a bill to the National Assembly. I want a special court for corruption. What happened to the bill? It was killed. That's the national problem. See, if we continue to do all this, we will just continue to be talking and agitating and rove in one single direction and with no solution, unless we strengthen our institution and make them work perfectly as is done in other places.
Thank you very much, Comrade Ayo. Appreciate your call this morning. Well, you see, again, it's something that you people have mentioned, the strengthening of the institutions thing. It's what Ayo has underscored there. We've been talking about this, but I don't know. And you also observed in studio here, when you talked about, look, who is actually, following the president in that way? This whole matter is attitude to corruption. Who has supported him by doing like he has done, for example, doing anything to show that despite not being bound by any particular regulation, I'm following, I want to do. In other words, who is supporting him? I think the rhetorical kind of a situation is that nobody is following him. Mr. President is doing what he's doing alone. So you have a whole cabinet of men. If all of them could be of one mindset, so the thinking be, so the thinking is that if all of them are of one mindset, then things will be better in terms of strengthening the institutions, right? Is that what you think? That if you had a cabinet of about 30 men and 90% of them see it that way?
Well, we're all humans. I think they will follow the leader and they will see his body language.
And these ones are not saying they're not following the leader.
Yeah, but there's the difference is body language. I mean, I think the previous administrations, they will say they're fighting corruption, and their body language is saying something else. So, a lot of it is not only talk the talk, but you walk the talk. So.
Okay. Ismail in Kaduna, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you so much. Let me go straight to the point, Uncle Yori.
Thank you.
Not putting a leadership is our problem. Please, Uncle Yori, you people used to forget about the whole situation. You have not been communicating on your television. The whole northern region has no single economic power. There's no single economic power in the northern region. For the past 15 years or 20 years. And as you go to Lagos, if you reach Apapa port, they will tell you that economic gate to the country. The whole northern region has its trade transaction in the northeast. From Banki to Gomboro, you will go and meet 150 trucks loaded with 90 tons, 100 tons going to the West African countries. Mm-hmm. And for the past 17 years, that business is not there. And there's nowhere you will go to this node and generate a business of 100,000 and go to the bank and facilitate the transaction. They will tell you that they have to go to Lagos. So
it seems, Ismail, it seems that, if I understand you, you're saying that there's a sense in which the North is being ignored, or, you know, is that what you're saying, that it's not fair?
It has been marginalized.
Marginalized, that the North, yes, the North is actually being marginalized.
Financially, okay, economically.
Very interesting perspective.
It's not interesting, it's on ground. Gawan has said it at Kaduna International Trade Fair. Since 1999 to 2015, 80% of Nigerian resources being spent in the south, only 20% being sent to the north. It's the former president who said it publicly. He tantalized it on television, on network.
And this is working against the north.
You know it better than me. You're supposed to tantalize it to bring this inequality in this country.
All right then. Well,
what are the factors of production? Preliminary definition. What are the factors of production? Land, capital, labor, and entrepreneur. If you have the three, there is no capital, there is nowhere you will move.
Really appreciate your call, Ismail, in Kaduna. Thank you very much for calling in. Interesting. He said, no, don't say it's interesting. It's on ground here. Don't. But I meant interesting in terms of, it's not the perspective that confronts you, that hits you on the face every morning. Now, he's saying that, look, there's a tendency to forget this, you know.
No, well, generally, when you look at the indices of, development, there seems to be an agreement that there is, higher level of poverty, number of children out of school in the northern part of Nigeria than elsewhere. Now, do you want to now situate that problem as a function of the people that are appointed to work, in the public sector? That's a different, discussion, entirely. But I agree that if it's in terms of human development indices, certainly the northern part of Nigeria is worse off.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you. The North is lagging behind, but 40% of the employment in Nigeria comes from the North. Farmers, a big part of the development and the stability of Nigeria. I definitely believe the president right now is actually focusing a lot on bringing them, education, reviving education in the north, with the food for the children in school. There's also the agriculture. I think that's the key. I think if we can get people employed, whether through agriculture or other means, that will in many ways alleviate the issues. It's not for government to be pumping money. It's for government to put money in the right places, strategic places. Employment, agriculture, and education for the future.
I suppose Imael was making the point then that whoever is in charge of such things, as far as this area that I am calling attention to is concerned, he or she hasn't done a good job in that.
I really don't blame him, because it's really dire. It's really dire, and people are expressing their frustration by banditry, Boko Haram, and so many other ways in migrating outside the country.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Adiola. Olufela in Mushi, good morning. Olufela.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
How are you today? Good
sorry, it's Olushola.
Fela.
Oh, it's Olufela.
Why
are you people confusing me now? Thank you very much. We have Olushola here, but it is Olufela.
Yeah, all right. It's Olufela. Okay. Yeah, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah. Our major problem in this country is not yet solved. We are having a very big problem with our constitution. it doesn't need to be changed. It needs to be changed. Things can't work out the way Constitution is.
But we were talking about ministers or about Buhari's ministers. Okay.
I know. We are talking about ministers. What are their works? Are they delivering?
Yeah.
What are they doing for us? These people are not active. Few, very few. We are not saying anything. Industries, electricity and everything is not coming up.
Okay.
We need the capable hands. And that's why I said the Constitution. If the Constitution is changed, when they are not delivering why they are paid, then they should be probed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olufela, for calling in. In fact, we've just about used up all our time. But I was saying in there that the number of balls that are up in the air with an assignment like this, as far as Mr. President is concerned, it's not one that should be envied. You know, there's so many things that he has to consider. Then he has to also consider the pressure, political pressure, because oftentimes there are those who worked for this and that, and the party will be saying that this person needs to be compensated. It was thought at one time that Mr. President was considering competency and efficiency, but he said, look, Oga, it's more than that. I don't know. And when we get to the Oga, it's more than that level.
I remember at a point, the president almost capitulated because he promised party members about 2.5 years into his cabinet that was going to review and make more appointments. Now, but I guess the expediency of the economic reality and so on, forestalled that. But having said that, as a matter of my closing thought, I also think that in considering those who make the list of ministers, the president should also pay serious attention to who becomes his chief of staff as secretary to the government of the federation. Because many times your chief of staff either actually make or mar you. And so that to me is also very key. Okay.
Well, I'm hoping for a very quick cabinet in place.
Not 6 months. It can't be 6 months.
And I'm hoping for a very balanced. I do understand the fact that there has to be some sort of political consideration for people there, but I hope that the key here is to have really competent people, technocrats preferably, but of course there has to be some political people to be rewarded. I do believe that this is his final term, and we may see a different president.
Belief, no, this is beyond belief. Know.
Well, this is going to be a different Buhari, knowing that it's not running for election again.
Okay, then. Thank you very much, Mr. Ademola Oshodi, governance and policy analyst, and also thanks as always to Mr. Yemi Makbadi, governance and strategy expert. So that's our program. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Iyori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.